What?
Rod.
Rod.
Lincoln. Yeah, something like that. Come on in. Jump in the window there. Put the driver's suit on. We are ready to make spin of, gosh, how many laps is it? 400 miles of the A Better Health 400 this upcoming weekend, and we're just getting cleaned up after Daytona. Welcome to episode 301 of the 5 to Go Racing Podcast here at GoPRN.com, Apple, Spotify, some of the other podcatchers. And now, where, Devin? Where are we now?
We're on YouTube.
That's correct. And I haven't said in the past that I just say, hey, we're on YouTube the last couple times mentioning it, but I'm putting them on now anyway on my own YouTube page, not because I'm great and wonderful, just because I have at least a few followers on there. So just search Doug Turnbull or something like that, Doug Turnbull Racing on YouTube, and you should be able to find it. We may soon make our own 5 to Go page, after this gets a little bit of ground running. But welcome to the show. We hope you see those videos there, which is just the three of us sitting in our respective mic caves here, yakking at you about NASCAR. I'm your co-host, Doug Turnbull, from the announcing team at Performance Racing Network, and I will be with PRN in turns 1 and 2, helping call the action this weekend, including for the first time ever on PRN, the Craftsman Truck Series. And with that, I didn't even know exactly what the branding was going to be like until they rolled out in Daytona. But the Truck Series is going to be presented as basically NASCAR Truck Series Radio Network. So it's the MRN crew does it at the MRN tracks, the PRN crew does it at the PRN tracks, but it's presented as a joint effort, basically. We're not even getting different polos, okay? But it's the NASCAR Truck Series Network. You can hear it in all the same places you heard the truck race before, Sirius XM, your local affiliates, and pressing the radio button basically on the NASCAR app, or going, in this weekend's case, to GoPRN.com. So be sure to check that out. We'll go over the Atlanta weekend schedule coming up there, but I got to be part of the team for that. Doubleheader on Saturday, main race on Sunday, but we got four races to dig into from Daytona that just transpired this past weekend as the race season is officially underway. Only one off weekend for the Cup Series between now and November. That is Easter weekend, and then the trucks at Xfinity will be at Rockingham. Let's dig into the headlines, but before we do, let's properly introduce, first off, our Rose Ring Racing Journo. He'll be at his first race of the year in Atlanta this weekend, too. Shiver Me Timbers, all right? He's the multimedia extraordinaire over there, writes for the Vanguard sometimes as well at University of North Georgia. Devin Kupka, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I thought it was a good 500 weekend. Got to catch the Daytona 500 after some UNG baseball, in which they got the series sweep over St. Leo on Sunday, but got to catch that action with some friends at Taco Mac in Dawsonville. And
there you go.
I'm just ready to talk about it. Let's go.
Rip roaring, ready to go, and also joining us on the line. He's got special company with him today, all right? He's a two-time Daytona 500 winner as a mechanic, of course, a championship-winning mechanic as well, and he grinds those gears in the Dawsonville garage. Dan Elliott, how you doing today?
Doing good. Hope everybody is as well, and I'm like Devin. Can't wait to dig into what was Daytona.
And if you don't mind, Dan, I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. Pan that phone just a little bit to your left so we can see what you brought into the shop with you today. Empty, folks. This is an empty. Okay, it's an empty. What do we have here, Dan?
We have the champagne bottle from the Victory Lane at Daytona in 1985. It rode home with me in the truck after the race was over, and I thought it was just a nice keepsake, and I really don't know that I ever intended to keep it this long, but it's sat on the desk forever and ever, and I just didn't have the heart to throw it away.
I'm glad you kept it. And then there's also a hat on top of it, right?
Yeah, that was the hat, the start off of the Winston, where you've got Daytona, Talladega, Charlotte, and Darlington, the four races. And for a lot of the people that don't know what that is.
The Winston Million, you mean?
Yep, the Winston Million. And the four races signify what, Doug?
What do they signify? I'm not sure what the four is. Yeah, I mean, I know what the races are. But.
Okay, Daytona, most prestigious. Talladega, the fastest. Charlotte, the longest. Darlington, the oldest.
There you go. Okay.
That's how that got picked out to be the four races, and they really didn't think anybody could win the four races. Three of the four, and I'm glad they didn't make it four of the four.
Yeah, because Bill did not win, Bill and you all, the whole 9 team, did not win the Coca-Cola 600 that year. You started off winning Daytona, And then the Talladega race is the one you came back for how many laps down?
Came back from 2 laps down.
From 2 laps down, which is just wild. And then
Which
there was
was
the Southern
turned from
500, which you had to overcome. There was it an oil leak on the car? Or there was a mechanical issue you had, or either you had to overcome or you almost slid in right at the Southern 500.
We just had to overcome the racetrack at the Southern 500 because, as I've said over and over again, we were the 4th fastest car, and God was good to us that day, and we emerged victorious. It's kind of like Daytona. We weren't the fastest, but we survived. And
Oh,
it came down to the last between Bill and Cale had a power steering line that ruptured, and that enabled us to get the lead and maintain the lead and win the million.
That's where I got the line thing mixed up. As Cale having the power steering line missed it. It was an oil leak at Talladega that put you 2 laps down, some sort of
That's
oil
right.
issue. So I got those confused. Well, we're going to celebrate more of the 40th anniversary of that magical 1985 season through this race season and this year here on 5 to Go. We're going to hear as we get closer to Darlington there more about that Winston Million. I watched that race back on YouTube several months ago. And it's incredible. It's just incredible, the aura, and to think that was 40 years ago, but certainly to think how y'all came back, because you were not, there was so much talk about you before the race, but you were not the hot studs during it at all. It was
No.
Cale and I forget who else, but it was definitely not about Bill and the 9 team there through the middle stages of that race. Let's jump into the 500 here. As many of you that think enough to listen to this podcast, hopefully all of you know, William Byron wins his 2nd Daytona 500 in a row. I'm going to buzz through the top 10 here and then get you guys' thoughts about it. So Byron wins. It's his 14th career win, but his first win in 28 races going back to Martinsville last spring. And of course, he survived that last lap crash with Cole Custer, Denny Hamlin, and Austin Cindric and the like in the lead there. That was on the white flag lap. Tyler Reddick, who had been a non-factor all day, led 0 laps, follows Byron White right through and finishes 2nd. Jimmy Johnson, I didn't know he even finished 3rd until looking at the running order afterwards. I'm not sure he was in the camera shot, but he was in the top 5 there. Johnson's best finish since his last full season in 2020. Any of the part-time stuff he's done, frankly, has been miserable, and I think he would admit that too. Chase Briscoe, your pole sitter, really was quiet much of the day, got some damage in an early wreck, but he finished 4th. John Hunter Nemechek, 2 Legacy Motor Club cars at the top 5, I read for the first time since they've had that name, since they've become Legacy Motor Club. He finished 5th. Then Alex Bowman, who was swept up in that last wreck, and if you saw it, he was on the top line and the cars were stacking up in front of him. He just stayed in the gas and kept plowing and hitting stuff until he basically, it's like what Andy J said in the ARCA race last year. I'm not lifted until I see God or the checkered flag. That's basically what Bowman did, and he finished 6th. How about Ryan Blaney, who is now your points leader by 1 marker over William Byron? He finished 7th. Blaney got wiped out in the Joey Logano Stenhouse crash. That was the biggest moment of the race, really, when you think about how many cars were affected and the fact that it took out Blaney. Blaney had one of the fastest cars of the day, led 23 laps, and he finished 7th. Who led the most laps of the race? Austin Cindric, and despite getting spun on the last lap, he somehow uncattywampused himself. He led 59 laps on the day, won this race 3 years ago, and he finished 8th. How about 9th place finisher, Dan Elliott, Justin Allgaier in the Junior Motorsports car, Traveler's Whiskey, number 40. I was playing a Chris Stapleton song at my trivia show when that duel race was coming to an end. And I was doing it as a basically a hint for an answer in the show. And it just happened to be that was the last lap of the duel. And Justin Allgaier raced his way in with the Chris Stapleton whiskey into the Daytona 500 as I was playing the song. Dan, you can thank me later. But what do you think about old Gator there finishing 9th and Dale Jr. saying after the race that he and Kelly think they know where they want to be now as far as the Cup Series there after that debut? What do you think, Dan?
Well, I'm curious to see what happens after Daytona because Daytona was the survival of the luckiest, I would say, based on what I saw. And I want to see a race where it plays out and competition is the rule of the day. And I want to see where that ends up then.
Yeah, for sure. Well,
I'll judge by that then.
And I mean, the Daytona, you can't judge any results for the rest of the season off of that. You can only smile if it went great and shrug if it went wrong way, or be super disappointed. But again, Allgaier finished ninth, and what a good toast after his championship, this first Xfinity championship a year ago. Chris Buescher, who's quiet all night, didn't lead any laps. He finished 10th. The Roush RFK cars were fast, but Keselowski and, as we very epically, Ryan Preece both got dinged up pretty badly. I want to mention the 11th place finisher, Michael McDowell. There was not a lot of noise from Spire Motorsports in this race at all. Hocevar had issues, ran in the back. Justin Haley, I don't think I saw him the whole race. He had an amazing cowboy-inspired, like, blue jeans fire suit going on. That was cool with the Chili's Ride the Dente scheme. But Michael McDowell had the Xfinity fastest lap of the day, running in mid-pack, because that's how it works in super speedways. He got the tow, and so he gets that extra regular season point there, Devin Kupka, and he finished 11th. Dev, I could go through other notable finishers. The field was like playing 52-card pickup once you get outside, really even inside the top 10. So, Dev, what did you think about this Daytona 500?
Well, I do want to say you're talking about Junior Motorsports and Justin Allgaier, and props to him finishing top 10 in the Cup Series debut for Junior Motorsports at least. But, I think having Junior and Junior Motorsports in the Cup Series needs to happen. I really do, because I think it benefits NASCAR. It's just, I don't know. I finally felt like I got that vibe that fans will come back. They say, oh, Junior has a team in the Cup Series now. So, and I think they should seriously look into that. But overall on the 500, I think that fuel saving stuff is starting to become – it's starting to get over the top, because we see this 3-wide racing, or even when we're at Talladega, we'll see 4-wide racing or whatever. But it just feels like I wouldn't say it's not exciting, but it's like not the most, it's kind of boring too. So that's something maybe NASCAR is going to have to look at. I know we were talking beforehand, maybe NASCAR needs to add a stage to the Daytona 500. I mean, you look at the Coke 600, you have 4 stages in that one, and that's one of the biggest races of the year for NASCAR. So maybe they need to add another stage in here, make things a little bit shorter. But there's been better 500s. I wouldn't say this is the worst one on record by any means, but it could have been better for sure.
If anyone's saying this is the worst on record, I don't know what you're expecting out of a race. I mean, it had a little bit of, it may not have had the best of everything, but it had a little bit of everything except for a fist fight. All right. I mean, it had a finish that was in doubt. It had tight, close racing. Really, it was just the rain delay. It might've been the worst part there.
Yeah. The one thing I could have done with that would have been the rain. That would have been, yeah. And you can't do anything about that.
Yeah. Well, and I want to get to that in a second. You have a good point about it, Dan. I wanted to ask you, Dev, because you watched this race in a Taco Mac with some buddies. All right. And I asked somebody at work this who's more of a casual fan. And I said, hey, when they were 3 wide, did your friends care that they were fuel saving? I mean, they're 3 wide and they're running 2 seconds slower, but I had to look at the score sheet. Really, the way I knew they were fuel saving is that they were 3 wide and the lines just kept passing, like the racing lines kept passing each other for the lead. And that's only because I've seen it before now over 2 seasons. What did your friends think when they were just stuck in this 3 wide pack in stage 2 and stage 3?
Well, I mean, honestly, I mean, we knew they were fuel saving, so it wasn't.
So your buddies knew it too,
huh?
Your buddies were aware of it, were they aware because you told them?
Yeah. They watch NASCAR every week.
Okay.
My friends Ryan and Ryan.
Oh yeah, okay, sure. Ryan Hutchison. Shout out to Brandon too. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so they knew the deal. So they were they gritting their teeth? Did they care? Did you care?
I mean, we were just kind of, I don't know. It felt like that middle part of the race, we were just all talking and stuff. And we were watching it because it was on the big screen and they had the audio on. So we heard the 500 over the speakers in the restaurant. Now, I don't know how many people at the restaurant were actually like watching the Daytona 500 there, although we were in Dawsonville, Georgia. But
yeah,
I mean,
you got to go to the pool room if you want to find some people that really care, right?
Yeah, but I mean, that middle part of the race really kind of did slug on a little bit, and I don't really remember too much from it except that Logano and Stenhouse wreck. But I mean,
well, that was with
you kind of just
few
knew
laps
though.
to
You
go.
just knew they were fuel saving.
Yeah. And when they're fuel saving, it means there's not, except for Logano coming from the back, he had a mechanical issue, debris knocked the throttle body off of his car, and they had to make a couple changes under the hood, and he lost a lap actually trying to get that repaired, a couple different pit stops. Logano got a free pass and then drove from the back to the front despite the fuel saving. And he had entered the top 10 or right on the cusp of the top 5 when the contact with Stenhouse happened. So he was one of the few that was actually making passes and kind of saying, fuel savings be darned. And the fact that he was trying to, pursue the Daytona 500. And of course, in that move there where, he could have given a little, Stenhouse could have not done the late block, whoever there asked 10 different people, you'll get 5 and 5 on the opinion and whose fault the wreck was, means it's probably both, but it took out his teammate too. It got Stenhouse's car sideways and into the side of Ryan Blaney. And of course, took out about 17 cars. Kyle Busch was one of those involved, now 0 for 20 in the Daytona 500. Kyle Busch also lamenting on X afterwards that NASCAR does not even know their own damaged vehicle policy, but it turns out that Busch really doesn't know it, because if you get towed back to the work area in the garage, not the full garage, but we're talking about the work area, if you exit that, you only get one chance to reset the DVP clock, or else you have to go back to the garage, right? And he went out when the race was still yellow after being in the work area. Therefore, he wasn't able to run a lap up to minimum speed and reset his DVP. And so he was ruled to be out of the race. So that's something they had to look at the rules more closely at. But yeah, that was we're going to get into, they improved the DVP rules, but now there's another whole layer that you have to pay attention to. And the A team messed up.
You got to feel for Kyle Busch, because didn't win a race last year.
Yeah.
And he was running decently throughout the 500. He was up
he sure
front.
was.
I think he might have led a few laps at one point too. But
he actually did not lead any laps, but he was right there near the front, and like Logano had come from the back to do it.
Yeah, and you just got to feel, because I don't know how they feel about going into this season. I know they were confident last year, but given the results that they had on a majority of these tracks, not the super speedways, but like the window feels like it's closing, because how long is RCR going to want to keep Busch there? Because he's getting old.
Do we think Busch is the problem? Do we think Busch is the problem there? I mean,
no, but they're just not. They're not winning enough. And how long is Busch going to want to stay in the Cup Series too? Because it's just
I think he'll be in it. I think he'll be in it until he gets his son deeply rooted in it.
Well, he said his goal was to try to race long enough to be able to race Brexton in a truck. And Brexton is now 10 years old. All right. So he's got 6 more years before he could be in a truck. So Brexton was born around the time that Kyle broke his, or either just before or just after.
Unless they do the Brexton Busch rule, which will start you at 12 years old in the truck.
Who are you referring to about a certain person's rule and the truck series lowering its age to 16, Dan?
I'm pleading the fifth.
Yep. First year of 16-year-olds in the truck series, 2013, Chase Elliott. And he won that year, by the way, too. So did Eric Jones. And Chase Elliott immediately set the record for youngest race winner. And then at Phoenix late in that year, Eric Jones, a few months younger than Chase, also won. And it moved that lower. And then the next year, Cole Custer won a truck race in New Hampshire, and it lowered it even more, like the lowest, youngest age. It's still 16, though. But, yeah, so a few more years till Brexton could get up there. Keelan Harvick's a couple years older than him. You're going to see Keelan up there before you know it, too. So you mentioned Kyle Busch. There were 14 different leaders, 56, I think it is. Let me make sure I have the number right. Yeah, 56 lead changes. But then I looked at the lap leaders deal, and a lot of that happened. And I hate to say it's cheap, but a lot of those happened when the field was 3 wide, and you had, it was jostling between Cindric and Bowman and Blaney and Bubba Wallace and things like that. And so it made it a little tough to really gauge who was the best, if you're truly getting people jostling for the lead, or if it's just 2 lines that are stuck next to each other. So let me ask you, Dan, did you leave away from Daytona? Well, you said in our pre-race show that we were talking, there's all this hype, and look at it from hype to finish. How did you leave felt? Did you feel fulfilled after all that happened, including the rain delay? Did you feel like you were wanting more?
I felt like I wanted more, because I feel like the whole Daytona weekend was plagued with the finishes, because I thought I knew who won the truck race.
Yeah.
And I kind of left I'm like Kyle Busch. I need a playbook that I can get everything, but I need AI to point out to me what's going on while it's going on, so that I can keep up with what's going on, because I don't have time to go through my playbook on all these changes that keep happening. And I'm
Yeah.
sorry, that's just the way it is. And I was at the very first, I was hyped, I was ready, and race starts, and 10 laps later, you're sitting there thinking, now what do I do? So you find yourself doing something else because you keyed up, and I can only imagine what the drivers felt like, because here they are, they're buckled in, they are finally getting their nerves settled and getting down to business, and then less than 10 laps later, they're back on pit road and out of the car for a while. So then you have to get back into the mindset that we're down to business. We're serious now. We're down to business. Through the middle, I'm kind of like Devin. It was a little bit lackluster through the middle portions of it, and I honestly think that what we saw of the first of it, where they were racing through the segments with fuel not an issue, and you can run through the whole thing. I think that's the most important thing of Daytona, that you can race during that time, and we don't see the lack of excitement, even though they're three wide. Understand that, but most people are content for the most part sitting where they're sitting. Most people are.
Well, yeah, there's no reason to push. You're trying to win the the last lap, the 200
Yeah,
lap, or in this
and then
case,
for the
200
race to end
first.
the way it did, kind of you don't race to the checkered flag. I'd love to see something change on how the race finishes.
Well, in this one, they did race to the checkered flag.
Yeah, but it was
It was actually trucks and the trucks and Xfinity that didn't race to the checkered flag, right?
yeah, but by the time it's explained to me what the process is that they're running to the flag, and I'd love to see the last several laps run under green and run to the flag and know that that's how it's going to be, instead of trying to keep in my mind, keep all this stuff straight on what has to happen for the person that's out front to win the race. And oh, by the way, he's got to pass inspection too.
Well, yeah, and that's what we saw at Parker Kligerman Friday night. He got out front and was legitimately in the front. He didn't just avoid a crash. He was legitimately in front in the Henderson Motorsports 75 that he's going to run part-time this season after stepping away from full-time Xfinity competition. They were too low in the rear end, though, in that race at the end. It's a Corey Heim, middle of the night, or something like 11 at night or whenever it was declared the winner, the driver out of Georgia there. So, Dan, Devin mentioned the idea of trying to add a stage so the stages are shorter, so you're not having a fuel issue, at least in the first three stages, I guess. So you're not dealing with the fuel savings. But then also you're spacing out the pit stops enough to where they're going to want to change tires, because if you're still having pit stops where they change no tires, they're still going to save fuel no matter how many stages there are, so they can shorten the pit stops and gain track position, right? So besides that, Dan, I want to say besides that, we thought, okay, maybe that's viable. Why not? The Coke 600 has 4 stages. It actually would make sense for the Daytona 500 to award more points than other races because it's so important in a way if they do it with the Coke 600. But Dan, a lot of the reason that it got to the fuel saving part, not only did they discover it, and also the drivers could watch the throttle percentage on their dashboards. Okay, so all their crew chief has to tell them is, hey, I need you to run 60% throttle the next 20 laps or whatever, and they could just sit there and do it. I mean, they don't have a cruise control button, but they could sit there and do that. And so it makes it even easier than maybe in the past. Now, but besides that, drivers say, well, part of the reason it came to this is because it's so hard to pull out and pass. That, the only way I'm going to gain a lot of spots is by trying to trick something with fuel strategy. You didn't even see in this race, Dan, where the manufacturers were all pulling out a line to try to pit together. It was really all just about a lap number. Would you like to see them put some less drag in the cars? And, that some drivers like Denny Hamlin have argued there's the horsepower to drag ratios off. It really needs to have less horsepower and less drag so the cars are a little more independent. Would you be as much in favor of changing something in the cars as you would changing the stages?
Well, obviously the cars need something, because when cars start flying again, this is not a good thing. So
Yeah, and Ryan
you've
Preece had
got
that. Yes,
you've got several factors at play here, and I don't know that there's an easy answer with the Gen 7 car. I don't know that there's an easy answer to this, And given the concern of the day, let's try to keep the cars on the ground first. Then let's play with the speeds of the car. And I'm still concerned about another factor, and it's not the flying part, but it's the landing part. Because when I saw that car hit the racetrack after it was up in the air and how rigid that car was, whoever is in the driver's seat is going to feel every bit of this impact.
And Ryan Preece said as much too when he got out of the care center, basically saying at some point he doesn't want to be the one that becomes the person that it actually gets. And it's happened to him very epically twice. Josh Berry went over very easily at Daytona in the summer race a year ago. We also saw Corey LaJoie flip pretty easily, I think twice last year, but at least once at Michigan. Yeah, Devin.
I want to say this about the next gen car or the Gen 7 car. I got to get that word out of my vocabulary.
Gen 7.
Gen 7 car.
It's the fourth year, so the Gen is here.
Yeah. What do y'all think about overall the success of the Gen 7 car? You think it's been a success, failure, and what about from the safety standpoint? I think we need to ask that question.
I would say the overall grade with safety baked in and the racing on the track, probably for what it was intended to do, a B-, and it's only that high for me because of how much the racing has improved on the 1.5 miles. All right, so B- for me. There's still something to be desired on the safety side. You've lost some on the short track and super speedway side, and even road courses. I think it races too well. So I don't know. What about you, Dan?
I would have to say I would give the Gen 7 car, because this car has probably been more than tweaked on more than any generation car that I've seen in a long time. So we knew that there were problems in the very early years when you first started racing, through the 60s, through the 70s, and then the speeds through the 80s just got insane. So you have factors of every decade that make a difference. But this Gen 7 car it's almost like the crush factor of this car has gone overboard. You don't have a crush factor anymore, as the old cars would. In some sense, they are safer, but the human body is taken all the things that the car has taken on. The human body now has to make up for what the car now is so rigid, is safe from that standpoint. It is so strong, it is so safe. But now the human body is the crash factor, the crush factor in this deal, because the human body can only stand so much of this. And you throw one wreck, it is so different from another in how the impacts are, and you think maybe this wreck doesn't look so bad, but as far as what the driver feels, it could be 5 times worse than a wreck that looked the same way. So given that, I'd give the Gen 7 car a C, because I still do not like the way the Gen 7 car races short track.
Yeah, well, that's true, and it seems like that short track aspect is improving. They maybe have made some improvements on the safety side, but certainly not enough when you're thinking how much impact the body is taking. I want to mention, too, that the Gen 7 car has tightened the competition. All right, it has flattened that curve, so to speak. The lower teams are still the lower teams. They're not nearly as far behind with the on-track product as they used to be,
But look at how we've done our race procedures in I don't know many instances now where anyone stays a lap down that is anywhere decent in competition. The way that we've changed how the races are run,
with stage
how that
breaks,
aspect of it. That now everybody's same lap. You have stages. There are so many things now to keep you from falling behind by a lap, by much distance at all.
Yeah, well, that's a great point. There are other factors at play besides not to mention even the playoffs itself, right? Where Harrison Burton can win and be in the playoffs, for instance. There are many other factors that make it equal. But if you look at just season-long stats, the win curve is spread out a lot. There were 18 different winners again a year ago. I think it was the same number.
But NASCAR's whole goal with the Gen 7 was parity.
Yes. And so that's there's two edges of the sword, and I think that's the issue. Is you want to see good cars and good drivers be able to start 17th and slice and dice, and now a lot of times they get stuck because the cars are just too equal, no matter how different the drivers are. Let's turn the page from that just a little moment. There was the rest of the weekend, and then I wanted to get to Atlanta. Okay, so the rest of the weekend we saw Jesse Love, surprise, an RCR car, go to victory lane in Daytona. And maybe the only surprise there was that it wasn't Austin Hill, who's won the last 3 season openers at Daytona, but Hill had some mechanical issues and finished in the back. His teammate Jesse Love gets a second career win. His first was at Talladega a year ago, and he led legitimately 30 laps and led the last, I think it was 18 laps in that race. So it wasn't a survive the carnage type deal, but there was a lot of carnage toward the end of that race. In fact, the 18 cars that finished on the lead lap were all running. Then there was a bunch of cars that crashed, I think on the second to last lap or whatever, finished a lap down. So the top 5 in that race, I won't bore us with a bunch of details, but the top 5 were Jesse Love, Sam Mayer. Watch our YouTube short video, Devin Kupka talking about the Haas team and what he expects from them in the Xfinity Series next year, by the way, because Sam Mayer and Sheldon Creed, Haas factory team, finished second and third. Carson Kvapil, the rookie, car number 1 for Junior Motorsports, finished 4th, and Taylor Gray, the JGR, Joe Gibbs rookie, he finished in that 5th spot. Shout out to Dean Thompson and Jeremy Clements for finishing in the top 10, and to Patrick Emmerling in the 07 SS Greenlight machine. His Chevrolet ended up finishing in the 10th spot, and he actually got some big modified wins down the road at New Smyrna Speedway, I believe it was, over that weekend too. And he overcame the fact that his teammate, Georgia driver Garrett Smithley, stopped in Emmerling's pit stall during green, and Emmerling couldn't pit. and lost a bunch of time there. Smithley ended up not finishing the race for different reasons. There was also another big gaffe on pit road. Did you see this, Devin? Where Chris Wright, who's driving the Our Motorsports number 5, he's coming, he's screaming, like half the field's pitting or a third of the field's pitting, and Chris Wright, he blamed his spotter, but I don't know that was the case. Chris Wright saw the field start to pit and didn't brake enough and just plowed right through him. Basically, it's a surprise he didn't take out 5 cars, but he cleaned out the number 91 Josh Bilicki machine of DGM Racing. And looked like Bilicki should have been destroyed and totaled. He got in the rear of that car, and that also hit Ryan Truex's car and hurt his chances. It destroyed Chris Wright's car, all right? However, Josh Bilicki, despite the full speed Chris Wright driving up under him, Josh Bilicki finished on the lead lap in 14th, which I think is pretty incredible from that. But that was a huge gaffe. Chris Wright, I've seen a lot of criticism of him in the past and just not being up to snuff there. He's had cups of coffee in the Truck Series and ARCA and such, and now he's going to get a full-time Xfinity ride there. So we will watch for that. Also want to mention that were there any thoughts on the Xfinity race, guys? The Devin, you didn't get to watch. Maybe were you working at UNG?
But I will say this. I watched like a little bit of it when I was in the softball press box after basketball.
Yeah.
The big props to NASCAR and the CW. Excuse me.
Yeah.
For how about that graphics package? Something new first.
Man,
new graphics
all weekend I was sitting around going, I want to know about this graphics package. Like all weekend I was going, man, the graphics. No, I know that's a big deal to you, Devin. I'm making fun, but it did look crisp, man.
It changes the look of the broadcast, and we got something new and refreshing for the first time in years. So I was excited about that. It looked great. They had the cars on the graphics, which I think is a big plus that I think that broadcasting should look at ESPN and TNN and CBS. They all used to show the cars on the graphics. Let's bring that back. And look, and they boxed the interviews in that lower third graphic and all that, and they did all the stats and stuff. Looked like the TNT open wide coverage. You got to give a lot of props to CW and NASCAR. I think they did a terrific job with the Xfinity Series broadcast on Saturday.
I think absolutely there. And by the way, the energy in the booth, the information coming from the booth, frankly, was a lot. There was a lot. I had a lot left to be desired watching the Truck Series race in ARCA. All right. And I mean, no rub, Jamie Little, I mean, I think it's great she's up there, but I didn't feel the energy coming out of it. Okay. In the Cup Series, I think they sometimes just let the picture speak to you and don't really make you realize you're watching something awesome. As great as I think Kevin Harvick especially is at explaining things, that Xfinity booth had it all. And by the way, the guy disqualified from the truck race the night before was one of your people in the booth, Parker Kligerman. You had Parker Kligerman, who had just run the Daytona truck race, and Jamie McMurray, the 2010 Daytona 500 winner, as your two people in the booth, with Adam Alexander, who's done this for years and years. So I just props to them, and Kim Kuhn, Dylan Welch as well on pit road. Also, Carla, I forget her last name on the broadcast. It was Carla Gebhardt when she was with Dale Jr. Reloaded, the podcast last year, who's a local TV personality in Charlotte. Carla did a good job as well, covering the Care Center and doing the pre-race show. Dan, did you watch Xfinity race at all?
Yeah, I watched a little bit of it. I didn't get too deep in it. I did want to bring out something about all of these races. To me, when you look at these things and you dissect them, no one realizes what the lack of practice across the board means for all of these races. And I think it's very evident in what I saw is showing up now is the fact, because of lack of practice, you now find yourself in traffic trying to deal with not learning how to draft, but getting in the rhythm of it and being able to maneuver somewhat as you get around cars. It's kind of like pit crew practice that we used to have here. It's one thing to be out front out here and have one car and you have the driver drive in real fast and you do your pit stop, but that does not simulate 20 other cars around you, or the fact of all of the confusion of all the cars coming down pit road together, and you're trying to find your pit stall.
Yeah.
And you say you're right here. Okay, all of this leads into what I said about the fact of lack of practice.
Yeah.
And that's what I'd like to see brought back across the board, is more practice, because it does help you not just with the race, but especially with things that contribute to the race that don't have anything to do with being on the racetrack.
Well, that's a great point. There were practice sessions at Daytona, but I think,
but it's few. It's very few.
It's very few, and certainly there are less sometimes in other places. Yes,
and normally through these practices, they tell you to kind of keep away from the traffic, to where that you are kind of on your own, and that's the whole idea. You're trying to get practice in so you can qualify. I don't know how the qualifying sessions. You don't know sometimes whether you're in a pack by yourself, so you're trying to get your car the fastest by itself most of the time. So you need clean air, so you're not around cars all the time. And drivers need this. They need that experience, and especially coming to pit road on and off.
Yeah, and you, Devin, yeah, I agree.
I think there are two reasons why NASCAR. Now, Daytona, Talladega, Atlanta, I think there's reasons why they don't have practice, is because they're super speedways and all that. But there are two reasons, I think, overall, that we don't see practice that much in the NASCAR Cups, really all across all three series. One, I think, is the TV time. The broadcasters don't really want to do that. I don't think they're as interested anymore. So that's why they try to fit it within a 2-hour window. And another thing, too, and I think this pertains more or less to the Cup Series than anything, is they want to keep that parity in there. So they want the least, before the race, I feel like they want the least amount of on-track time before the race. I mean, look at what they did
have
during
less
COVID
time to
in
dial in the car.
2021.
Yeah.
That they were like, okay, well, if we could do this for this, then it's like everybody has an even playing field is the key word here.
Yeah.
And you get that if you don't have qualifying and you don't have practice.
Okay, so let's put a handicap on the drivers that have run the most laps. Let's handicap the drivers that have the most experience there, and do as you do in golf. Let's put a handicap on the people that have the most experience, because how, as you're coming into the sport and you don't have a lot of time on these super speedways, how the hell are you going to get it?
Well, yeah.
I want to see more practice come back. I just don't.
Yeah, because you're in the deal now streaming. It doesn't matter how much TV time you could stream all this stuff and sell this stuff. So
Well, and also not all practice has to be televised either. I
No.
mean, if you're talking about the good of the sport, Devin, not all practice has to be televised. Now, if there are cup cars on the track, I want to be able to watch it on TV from home somewhere or stream it somewhere, but not all of it has to be televised, and not all of it was from Daytona either. Some of the ARCA, and I think, some of the ARCA stuff for sure that wasn't televised. So, yeah.
And I mean, yes, I agree with the streaming thing. You definitely could put it on that Tubi channel or whatnot. I just don't think NASCAR, just from a parity standpoint, is going to go back to that. I just don't think they will.
Well, it seems like the pendulum is starting to swing the other way from the height of the no practice times in 2021 and 2020, because you're starting to hear just a little more gripe, especially on the Cup side where the teams are a little more established, that, hey, they'd like just a little more track time to dial it in and make sure there weren't any bugs. And I'm glad they had it at Daytona. That is the biggest race of the season for all four series. All right. And you can't have cars where their first lap is in the duel or in qualifying and it's all bouncing around. And we saw it in the Truck Series. Tyler Ankrum, there are two of them. There's Tyler Ankrum in Truck Series qualifying, went out, and you're supposed to do a brake check at the end of pit road. And he went to the brakes and drove past the official and then stopped, to his detriment. So there's something a little off there. Gio Ruggiero, who ended up finishing second in the Truck Series race, by the way, Gio Ruggiero, he also had a cut tire. I mean, during qualifying, super speedway qualifying, boring, right? I mean, and it's just the height was too close, and he cut, I think it was a right rear tire on his Tricon garage truck. So they had no practice. Their practice had been rained out. And the ARCA series, they actually decided to rain out their qualifying and move the practice to the qualifying time, so those crap box ARCA cars, could have. They were, I mean, 2/3 of that field were like, as Brendan Gaughan said to me one time,
Hey,
you need a tetanus
Doug,
shot
you
in that
got to
garage.
start somewhere, and I'm sorry, you got to start somewhere, and that's just what you're going to get. But I agree, more practice would help these situations.
Exactly, yeah. So on to trucks real quick. Y'all make some great points about that. And I like the ARCA series too, but just there's some rough stuff over
Yeah,
there.
we know.
Using those 2013 Chevy SS bodies, for instance. Okay, so the ARCA series, the truck series. So we mentioned Parker Kligerman was DQ'd, and they're appealing that today. As we record this, we're recording Tuesday morning, February 18th, 24th anniversary of the loss of Dale Earnhardt. Godspeed to Earnhardt. But we're recording this on Tuesday. The appeal is supposed to be today. Normally this stuff doesn't go in a team's favor, but Henderson Motorsports thinks they have a really good explanation. I mean, I didn't want to see him get DQ'd, but I don't want to see him get undQ'd and you not know the winner till Wednesday either. But whatever, we'll see what happens. But Corey Heim declared the winner in the truck race. He only led 2 laps, but he started third. His teammate Gio Ruggiero, I mentioned, the rookie, he finished second in the race and actually led 11 laps. And then the rest of your top 5 were the Thor Sports Ty Majeski, who started second in the race. Grant Emfinger finished 4th, and Justin Haley for Spire Motorsports finished in the 5th spot. Shout out to Malcolm in the middle, Frankie Muniz. He finished 10th in his first time as a full-time truck racer. I also want to point out, too, that Chandler Smith is in the truck series again. I think that's still hard to get used to. And he's in the 38 truck that Lane Riggs drove last year, the number. They switched Riggs to the 34. One more shout-out. 73-year-old Norm Benning, truck number 6, raced his way into the truck race. And even though he got lapped early, carnage, right? Survival. He finished 16th. So how about it? Shouts out to Norm Benning. Shouts out to Morgan Shepherd. Okay, they fought the good fight. Norm is still planning to run some other races this year. So, did y'all get to watch the truck race? Any thoughts on that? My wife booked us a Valentine's dinner, even though she doesn't like Valentine's Day. So, I watched the beginning, followed it on my phone best I could, watched some highlights later. Any truck racing thoughts there?
I thought the truck race. Did you watch it, Devin?
I really didn't get a chance too much to watch it because I was over at a friend's place and we were playing Mario Party, and I tried watching.
Okay, hold on. I was at Valentine's dinner. I got dry. You were at a friend's place playing video games and you didn't watch the truck race, Devin?
Well, no, I was when I started eating like the Whataburger up there in Dahlonega. I had it on my phone, and then I had to get locked in for Mario Party, and which I ended up losing, but.
If we can't get Devin to watch truck races, who are we going to get to watch truck races, Dan?
I don't know. I thought the truck race was pretty good. I really was surprised When I saw Parker, I was happy for him, and saw all the burnout, all the stuff happen, and then
So excited, right? I mean, he was just geeked. I mean, 100%.
come to find out later he didn't win the race. I'm thinking this just ain't right. So
It's tough.
Yeah, I got you got to feel for Parker Kligerman. I
Yeah.
know I didn't get to catch the ending or anything, but like you got to feel for him because look, retire from driving or Xfinity Series driving, and then now is in the booth, and then goes out and wins Daytona in the truck race, and then to be stripped away.
I
And,
enjoy
and
watching
has
the truck race because it's like watching a brick go through the wind. It's amazing to me that in packs that they can run as good as they run, but they provide a lot of the truck racing to me has always been exciting and seems to bring some of the best racing that you usually see on a weekend, even though you don't watch the truck race most of the time.
well, it certainly, and I like it because it's the right mixture of refined and unrefined. And I think Xfinity has those characteristics too. But the Truck Series, you really don't have, except for Spire Motorsports, you don't have Cup teams that are heavily involved. I know Toyota is a big backing effort behind Tricon, but that's Tricon. It's not Joe Gibbs Racing. The Chevy teams are not really Hendrick teams. I know there's Hendrick cars sponsoring on Spire stuff on Raja Carruth and when Corey Day runs, but it's not a Hendrick effort. It's not a Penske effort on the Ford side or Roush Fenway on the Ford side. It's just a little bit less refined. It feels like it's its own thing. It doesn't feel like Diet Cup, so to speak. And that's you definitely see a lot of good come out of that. So, by the way, your point standings in trucks, Corey Heim leads Ty Majeski there on that because, we're caring about points. All right. ARCA series real quick. Elio Castroneves, he had to run some ARCA laps, make sure he was ready for Cup. I think he got wrecked 4 different times in the ARCA race on Saturday. I don't think any of it was his fault, though. I mean, I got to say, Elio, to me, there's a lot of people, oh, man, he must feel like crap after all the stuff he got caught up in. Maybe when he wrecked in the duel, he got hit. That wasn't his fault, but then he spun out overcorrecting after it. Okay. But I really feel like Elio didn't have as bad a time on his own hand as some would say, but nonetheless, in the ARCA race, he ended up running or pushing his teammate Brendan Queen to the win, and then wrecked it after the checkered flag after being wrecked 2 other times. But Brendan Butterbean Queen, Cars Tour Series winner a year ago, is now running a full-time season in ARCA in the 28 car that went to victory lane with Connor Zilish and others last year, and he was the winner in that ARCA race there on Saturday. Did you guys see when he got out of the car? Did that just the whole deal, Dan? Did you see?
No, I didn't see that.
He gets out of the car. And by the way, a race sponsored by Chili's that didn't have Chili's name in the title sponsorship. It was the Ride the Dente 200. I didn't even know what that meant. I had to look up thinking, gosh, I hope my browser doesn't go crazy when I type in Ride the Dente. Okay. And sorry, but I mean, I was like, what is that? And it turns out it was the Chili's Margarita, the Presidente. That's what that is. So drinking and driving, we love that. No, we don't. Okay, but anyway, but Brendan Queen legitimately leads the end of that race. He doesn't survive a crash. Legitimate winner. He beats William Swalich, Jason Kitzmiller, LeVar Scott, and Elio Castroneves, who got wrecked again after the checkered flag. And Brendan Queen's first ever ARCA win. He gets out of the car and says, he takes off his helmet. He says, I rode this mullet to victory lane. So he's got the mullet flying out. He says he's going to go party at Waffle House afterwards in the Chili's race. But that's pretty funny. And he was everything he's just everything that you kind of draw up in a movie about NASCAR there. Okay. But Brendan Queen wins it. That race was a bloodbath of driving, as the ARCA race often is. So it was a little bit tough to watch there. 13 cars on the lead lap, and there were 40 in the race, I think. There are 40 cars in the race, 13 on the lead lap at the end of it. And also, too, you had, Devin, were you familiar? And we mentioned him before on previous shows, Cleetus McFarland.
I've heard of the name. Isn't he he's a YouTuber?
He is. Cleetus McFarland had never driven a stock car. His real name's Garrett Mitchell, had never driven a stock car, and he went and tested at Daytona in mid-January and did pretty well in the test. He's got Greg Biffle down there as a driving coach. He drove the Rhett Jones number 30 that we've seen run well. I know Gregson ran an Xfinity last year. That car is what Frankie Muniz drove full-time 2 years ago. That's a solid car. He drove the number 30. Amber Balkan ran a couple years ago, and drove the number 30. What was I going to say? And he actually was running okay in that race, but he got cleaned out in wrecks twice. And maybe the second wreck, just lack of driving experience of avoidance and overcorrecting, might have played into it. But he got wrecked twice, and the second one finished him off. He finished 30th, and he gets out of the car and he's talking to MRN's Alan Cavana at the Care Center. And what does he say, guys? It's very endemic of what his act is on YouTube. Cleetus McFarland, I was just soaring through that field like a bald eagle. All right. He had the whole thing going, and then they bring him up in the booth afterwards. But this is a guy, and I'm sorry, Dan, not to ask you this. I got to go to our Gen Zer here, Devin. This is a guy, 4 million YouTube followers. He had a YouTube in-car camera where he was talking to people under caution on YouTube, okay? He had the whole deal going. I know this it cheapens the sport, but it's also happening in ARCA, Devin. Do you think this is good that you got personalities here? And he did okay. He didn't totally crap the bed like he should have. He actually has driven stuff before, just not a stock car. What do you think, Dev? Is that the right thing to have, is to have YouTubers bringing their people with them?
Yeah. Could you imagine if you were able to interact with William Byron in the middle of the race under caution? Like people I think would love that.
Yeah.
Kind of like interacting with Brad Keselowski.
Let's go back to the 2012 Daytona 500. Is that what you're talking about, Dan, where he tweets out a picture of the jet dryer fire and nobody even knows that he has his phone in his car? Yeah, that was that put an end to that, but it was awesome.
What a novel idea.
Hey, Dan, didn't you at Gresham y'all have to tell drivers not to put their phone in their cars after that? I feel like I remember that. Or maybe it was the K&N race.
But at Gresham's a little bit different deal, because on a half mile, you sure don't have the time to do other than when you're sitting, and there wasn't a lot of sitting. So,
right.
a little bit different.
Yeah. Well, and Brad was under red flag in that 2012 500.
Yep.
But back to you, Dev. So you think that it'd be interesting if more drivers did that. But here's the question on YouTube. I'm not talking about NASCAR fans. Do you think more people would care about Cleetus McFarland talking to you under an ARCA yellow flag, or William Byron and his personality talking to you under a Cup Series yellow flag? One of them has 4 million YouTube.
Let's do the real star, Noah Gragson.
Okay, well, he pleaded the fifth and went Noah Gragson, or I guess he's car 4, pleaded the fourth. Okay, Noah Gragson. It would be interesting to have that. And Cleetus McFarland, even when he got out of his car in the garage, was talking to because the in-car camera is just on and pointed at him. He was just talking to him. I don't know. I have conflicting thoughts, because I don't like the idea. You already have the rent-a-ride stuff going on, but now it's could Jake and Logan Paul just show up? I'm just thinking of big names, right? Jake and Logan Paul just show up and, just drive. You kind of hope there's more of that. I know Mike Wallace didn't like it. All right. So, yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, that was the ARCA race there. And again, there was some good racing up front for sure, but that one, there was a ton of wrecking too. So it was tough. That was a tough race to get going and watch it there. We move on from Daytona. I want to buzz through some NASCAR headlines real quick and then get on to Atlanta. Okay. Because Atlanta's coming up, and Better Health 400, our home race. Devin and I are both going to be at the track. We also wanted to mention too, Chase Briscoe and Austin Cindric were the front row in the Daytona 500. You pretty much had the 4 people you thought would race their way in or time their way in, get into the 500. There weren't a lot of surprises, but there was a lot of suspense. You had Truex, Johnson, they timed their way in Wednesday. Justin Allgaier, Corey LaJoie raced their way in Thursday. And LaJoie, by the way, had a very respectable time in the Daytona 500. I did not know until the race weekend that the deposit he'd given to Rick Ware was before he had a sponsor, and it was his kid's college fund. I think that's quite interesting. But I mean, what a story, right? Imagine if he had gone and won that race, and he did run up front. So anyway, that puts a lid on the 500, just who qualified in. Pretty much all the small cars missed it, except for LaJoie's, right? There were all the small cars. You thought it was a toss-up between LaJoie and Alfredo getting in the race, and it kind of played out as expected, but still very exciting. Allgaier had to make a pass on the last lap to win it, or to get in, I mean. Here we go. NASCAR said, it's open potentially, or the rumor is they're open to having outside investors, and B, that they're still courting OEMs, which we know, manufacturers. And then a report came out after that from Catch Fence that Dodge is submitting plans. That doesn't mean they're approved, but submitting plans to re-enter the Craftsman Truck Series there. Dodge has been in the sport multiple times, including through the early 2000s, Dan Elliott. And the way we've seen Dodge and Toyota enter the sport back in the 2000s was go to the Truck Series first. Surprise, maybe try the new rules in trucks first before going to Cup instead of vice versa. Okay, anyway, but they go to the Truck Series first and then work their way up. So, Dan, what do you think about the idea of Dodge being the one to return after all this talk about Honda or Nissan or whoever?
Well, may I back up
Please.
for just 1 second? Excuse me, and say,
I'm glad your transmission has reverse in it.
What will 1/10 of 1% buy me as far as sponsorship with NASCAR?
You mean ownership in NASCAR?
Ownership with NASCAR, yep.
We won't know till they open the books in the antitrust case.
Do you think that 1/10 of 1% would get my name on? You think I could get my name on the pace car or something?
I would like to hope that 1/10 of 1% of NASCAR is probably way more than one race sponsorship of a Cup entry car. So I would say, yeah,
that and $1 will get me a cup of coffee on the McDonald's senior menu.
Well, 1/10 of 1%. I mean that's not bad.
No, it's not bad.
0.1% ownership in NASCAR is probably still millions of dollars. So
all right. So to your original question of starting in the truck series, yeah, let's get our feet wet a little bit and get into this, because I think the key to all of this is going to be, have we got enough money to across the board get into all of these series? Let's put an organization together and get our structure in place and get our ducks in a row, so to speak. And I think the emphasis is structure, Doug, and finding the people to partner with, because here's the hard sell to me on this is, seriously, when you get down to business, of the teams that are the teams you want to partner with, they're going to be a little bit skeptical at first of how serious you are, how it's going to work out, and are you going to be competitive? Because all of these things, this is not just the good old boys running anymore. This is, everything is taken seriously, everything is considered, and you have to know that going into this, me as an owner, are they serious about this? How much money they got, and can they stand the test of time?
And you know and saw it. You were in part, in a way, or tangential with Bill being at the tip of the spear for Dodge's entry back into NASCAR, right? For Bill Elliott's, he was the kind of the first Dodge driver. They won the pole for the Daytona 500 2001.
But that relationship was a lot through Ray, which Ray was the face of that organization at the time, which gave that organization a lot of credibility.
Yeah, well, absolutely. By leaving Jeff Gordon's car, 2 years early to do it.
So you get the owner first, then you get the driver. Everything that they did added credibility to where they were going and the seriousness of what they were planning to do.
So here's one thing to consider, and Devin, I want you to weigh in too, because you're the one that shared that. You saw that news before we did. If you started trucks, and remember, I mentioned a few minutes ago, a lot of independent teams from Cup teams, except for Spire Motorsports, all right? There's a big investment for Toyota, and I would say only moderate investments from Ford and Chevrolet in trucks. It means that if you aren't connected to a Cup team, you have more options to find a team to start with if you're Dodge, right? Spire Motorsports, however, is not a key Chevrolet partner. All right, they are not one of the cornerstone Chevy partners in Cup, and they are running 4 full-time Truck Series teams. Do we end up with a situation kind of similar to what Bill Davis did, where he was an early Dodge team and then switched to Toyota in 2004 and was running Toyotas and trucks and Dodges in the Cup Series? Could there be a little bit of a scenario there? Or do you get to have a situation where it's totally independent and then the manufacturer graduates there? I mean, Devin, here's what I want to ask you real quick, and then I want to read some other headlines. Dev, when you see, it's Dodge coming back in, like, do you realize, is it sort of a letdown? Like, man, a fourth manufacturer, wouldn't we want to see someone brand new, Volkswagen or someone? Like, I don't know. I'm just saying, like someone outside the box, or is it like, oh, we're going to do the Dodge thing again?
How about we get that smart car that Dan has in his garage? We'll run a
There you
series
go.
with that.
There you go.
That is a Mercedes. I'd say we're on the right path.
Yeah, let's get a Mercedes then. Okay.
Yep.
But with Dodge, it's more like, oh, look who's coming back. But if you look at who some of the top sponsors are in NASCAR when it comes to TV advertisement, Dodge, specifically their Ram trucks, are one of the top advertisers every year on television when it comes to NASCAR. So I got to imagine entering the truck series here, they want a piece of that pie, or they want to re-enter it into it. Now, I don't know about Xfinity or Cup, but I can't foresee Dodge just wanting to do truck series just for the Ram trucks, because I just don't know how much ROI they're going to get on that.
No, that no one. Because I had this thought while we were having this discussion, could you have like different manufacturers, different series? Wouldn't it be cool to see the truck series have a different slate of manufacturers, completely the Cup, and then those manufacturers could just really invest right there? The answer is no, not for a Friday night series that draws 1 million viewers and almost
I'd
no
love
fans
to see a Honda Ridgeline. I done told you. I'd love to see a Honda Ridgeline.
Yes, Jeopardy is what I would say about that. Okay, that's yeah. All right.
But I think the deal, Doug, is going to be hard sell on coming in and finding anybody that's willing to partner with you that I feel like could give you a legitimate, hard run, successful year with a chance at a championship in the first or second year, and that's what they're going to want to do, because, like Devin said, all the competition with the trucks across the board, you're not going to want to come into here and be the runner up to everyone else in the first year of this, and then at the end of the year look back and say, well, what did we do wrong?
Yeah, and look, Toyota's first year in the Cup Series, even though they had a lot of teams, was a disaster. Then they got Joe Gibbs.
There you go.
2008, Kyle Busch goes over there and wins 8 races.
Somebody's going to have to spend a ton of money to get where they want to go in a real, as Major Payne says, quick, fast, and in a hurry.
Hey, by the way, it would be the Ram, because Ram is technically run like a separate company that does. So it would be the whatever, the Advanced
and it would be Ridgeline if it was Honda.
If the Ridgeline, yeah, we're stuck on that one. Okay, hey, let's move on. More NASCAR sponsorship news. Busch Light will remain a Cup Series premier partner, and they'll they are not sponsoring the Clash anymore, but they are going to sponsor the Cup Series in the premier role, the pole sponsor for the Cup Series, and a new thing, the 5-race Busch Light Summer Series for pre-race country concerts. So Busch, Anheuser-Busch keeping their name in NASCAR. On the flip side, Pitbull, despite having an album named Trackhouse, despite being the pre-race concert at the Daytona 500, Pitbull announced Friday pretty abruptly that he is no longer affiliated with Trackhouse Racing. So he is out at Trackhouse. I would think that there's no coincidence that an investment fund, Avenue Investment Fund, was added as a minority partner last July with Trackhouse, and there were rumors in the offseason and late last season that Pitbull was out, and that was never, announced, so to speak, that he never was. Well, now he is. So I see those happening at the same time, and I don't like that he is out at Trackhouse, but I'm glad he's still affiliated on the NASCAR side. I hope he's still, at least with the Florida races, comes to those. Jeff Gordon. Now we're going back in time. Jeff Gordon has talked with Tom Cruise about Days of Thunder 2. And I mean, discussed the making of it, not actually being in it, Jeff Gordon, the actor, no. But he has talked with Tom Cruise about it. And he said that Tom Cruise basically seems to be kind of going back and forth on the idea. If you remember, Rick Hendrick and Jeff Bodine were instrumental in influencing Tom Cruise and Jerry Bruckheimer in making that movie back, in the late 80s. And then when it came out in 1990, Rick Hendrick was a big part of it. So no surprise that the vice chairman, Dan, of Hendrick Motorsports, Jeff Gordon, would talk to him about Days of Thunder 2. Just real quickly, Days of Thunder 2, Dan, yay or nay?
I would have to see exactly where they go with this, I guess. I don't know that I could handle Talladega Nights.
Oh man!
Oh, please, let's not do another Talladega Nights.
No, that needs to be its own. It was perfect as it is.
But it would be a good opportunity to Hendrick to get rid of a lot of race cars and parts and stuff that they've got sitting around that they wouldn't have to have an auction for. They would just destroy them in the movies. Yeah.
You are talking about a real thing. Hendrick Motorsports auctioning off a bunch of its old parts there.
Yep.
Devin, what do you think? Just real quick, Days of Thunder, yay or nay, since we're over an hour
Let's do
here.
it. I still need to watch the first one. I know I'm very uncultured, but
Well,
this is bad.
I'm not going to judge because there's a lot of
I finally got to watch Ford vs. Ferrari last year, but
that's a great movie. Hey, so the only reason I would say yay on this is because we're not talking about any other NASCAR movies. I would rather have not a sequel, be something, just have something on its own. But if the only way you're going to get a legit, not a comedy, not a docuseries, not a Netflix sitcom, but a legit movie made about NASCAR is to make a Days of Thunder 2. If that's the only way you're going to get it, then I'm for it. But I don't need to see it again. You know, it needs to be something new and on its own. And if you could sell me on 50-something-year-old Brad Pitt being an F1 driver, and we saw a teaser of that trailer or a teaser of that commercial during the Daytona 500 for a movie just called F1, by the way, then we could, I guess, be sold on 60-year-old Tom Cruise or whatever doing the same thing in NASCAR. So
maybe instead of a movie that instead of a 2, we have a season-long Days of Thunder.
Okay, so a miniseries.
Yep.
Days of Thunderstorms. Yes. Okay. Hey, listen to some driver news here. We go from Jeff Gordon, who drove the 24, to Jeffrey Earnhardt, who will run a part-time schedule in Sam Hunt's Xfinity Series number 24 car that was driven by Ryan Truex this past week. The car that Ryan Truex drove, or the team he drove for and won twice last year, still doesn't have him signed up for any races in Xfinity, and that is Joe Gibbs Racing. But Eric Almirola, who also won a couple of times for them a year ago, is going to run 9 Xfinity races for JGR, I believe, in the 19 car, and that will start at Atlanta Motor Speedway this weekend. Kyle Busch will be in the Atlanta Motor Speedway Truck Series race for Spire. That will be the first of 5 truck races that he's going to run. Luke Fenhaus, his first race of the season in trucks will be with Thor Sport at Atlanta, and he's going to run multiple races this year. Doug George will be his crew chief. The 66 truck driven at Daytona by good old Wisconsin classic Johnny Sauter, who had 3 wins at Daytona there in trucks. DGM Racing, the team that's full-time with the 71, the 91, and the 92 in the Xfinity Series, they have formed an alliance with the 2 years defunct Jesse Iwuji Motorsports, and they're calling it a full-time effort, so I'm guessing that Jesse Iwuji Motorsports is buying into DGM somehow. It's not going to be a separate car because they didn't run at Daytona with a separate Jesse Iwuji car. So we'll see with that. Jesse Iwuji founded his team a few years ago with Emmett Smith as a partner. And then they ceased operations 2 years ago after a lack of sponsorship. And lastly, on my headline board here, Natalie Decker, who's been in and out of trucks and Xfinity here in ARCA for several years. She and her husband, Derek Lemke, have announced the birth of their son, February the 5th. So congratulations to Natalie and Derek and their little boy. So that runs the board there. And, fellas, let's jump to Atlanta Motor Speedway now. I know this is a long episode, y'all. We had a lot to say about Daytona, and it just connects to everything else. I want to run down not only just what happens on the track, but a few things that you fans can attend. Now, they've already opened the campgrounds as we record this, so you could go out there and be cold a few days early. But we're already glad. Brandon Hutchison, the track vice president, general manager, he was down there welcoming in campers on Monday of this week. I'm going to skip ahead to Friday, though. At 9 a.m. on Joseph E. Boone Boulevard there in West Atlanta, City of Refuge, Zane Smith is going to be making an appearance there, and he's going to be there with his crew chief, Ryan Bergenti, and the number 38 team. So they're going to be over there making an appearance. If you're around Friday morning and want to head to Northwest Atlanta, City of Refuge, they sponsored that car a year ago. There's going to be on Highway 85 in Riverdale, 6579 Highway 85 at the Jiffy Lube, Joey Logano is going to have a race car reveal. All right, so a fan appearance. We don't see as many of those anymore with drivers out in the field. Keep in mind, they're keeping points now in their marketing appearances, right? There's a point standings for driver marketing appearances. Joey Logano, Friday, 1 p.m., Riverdale, Georgia, 6579 Highway 85 at the Jiffy Lube. They're going to unveil a race car. All right. Now to the racetrack, 3 p.m. on Friday. Yes, there is Friday on-track activity. I hope I can make it down here and get off work in time for Craftsman Truck Series qualifying. Okay, so no practice this weekend, only qualifying. Go back to our discussion a few minutes ago. But Craftsman Truck Series qualifying at 3 p.m. Xfinity Series qualifying 5 p.m. Friday at AMS. And then at 7 p.m., if you're hanging out on the quarter mile, Legends and Bandolero Racing. All right. Now, on Saturday morning, I believe it's at 9 a.m. for me at the Raceway Ministries tent. We're going to have Carson Hocevar there. The Raceway Ministries tent is out in front of the racetrack, kind of in the main campground area out front. Just be looking for that tent. You'll see banners up and such. We have Carson Hocevar there Saturday. I think that's at 9 a.m. I actually need to get that locked down. And then at 11 a.m. Saturday, two things are happening. Most importantly, Cup Series qualifying. Cup Series qualifying on Saturday. No practice once again, but also on Saturday, guys, at 11 a.m., I've been asked to go to the certain campground at AMS and talk to a group of campers and give them a NASCAR 101 lesson. All right. All I'm going to say, y'all know how much I talk. God help them. All right, that's a no, but check it out. It's gonna be at the Flott Brothers Campground. I mean, it's their personal campgrounds, but if you walk by, they're literally, here's what the name of it is. Are you ready, guys? They're the Melanated, Melaнаted, the Melanated Campout. That's what they're called. Happy Black History Month, everybody. I'm pumped about this. So at 11 a.m., I get to make an appearance there, do NASCAR 101, thanks to Dustin Bixby and the track for getting me hooked up with them, the Melanated Campground. At 11 a.m. is also the same time Cup Series qualifying. I promise I'm done running my mouth here very soon because Cup Series qualifying is going to end, and we're going to go right into 1:30 p.m. on PRN. So 11 a.m. on PRN, Cup Series qualifying. 1:30 p.m. also on the NASCAR Truck Series Network, which is also be done by PRN, is the Freight Racing 208, 135 laps there at AMS. And then at 5 p.m., local company sponsor also, two big local companies doing sponsors here, the Bennett Transportation and Logistics 250, 5 p.m. on Saturday. So from 11 a.m. until basically 7:30 at night, with very few breaks in between, you got on-track activity. If you want bang for your buck, I mean, I want you to come Sunday and Better Health 400, but if you want bang for your buck, boys, got to come to AMS. Devin, they've been doing the doubleheader about 10 years now. Are you a fan still?
Oh yeah, it's the only now it's the only doubleheader of the year for NASCAR for the Truck Series and Xfinity Series. So it's such a great ticket. I went as a fan a few years ago. You really can't. I buy a weekend package. You really can't go wrong on Saturday. 2 races. Take your friends with you. It's a great time. It's a great time. You can't go wrong with two different series racing. You really can't.
You like the doubleheader all mushed together, Dan, instead of having Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night?
Absolutely, because if you've ever felt the traffic in Atlanta, you'll understand why.
It's another good reason to come Saturday. All right.
Yep.
I'm trying to sell fans that are only coming Sunday. I'm trying to sell fans that maybe think they can't make it Sunday and are trying to choose one or the other, and they don't think Sunday is going to work for them. Come Saturday.
I'm like Devin. That weekend package to me just makes all the sense in the world, and it's almost like with the racetrack being changed like it is, it's almost like to me you left Daytona, which was the ultimate race atmosphere and weekend package. Now you're coming in for like it's Atlanta. It's almost like coming into another Daytona just right after Daytona, and all the hype and excitement I think is just going to whatever started at Daytona is just going to build through the Atlanta weekend and bring you that package on Sunday. I just look for Sunday's race to be a very, very exciting race and a very unpredictable race.
I think very unpredictable, and handling is going to matter more. Handling is going to matter more. The runs, Daniel Suarez, I believe, said the runs at Atlanta, on the racetrack, not because you ate a bad corn dog, okay? The runs at Atlanta it took y'all say the runs happen so fast in Atlanta, you can't quite aggressively block as much there. It's just the consequences are way higher. The margin for error is way lower. The radius of the turns is tighter. It's on point. Now, remember, of course, we've gone the whole show without saying the Atlanta race a year ago was the closest 3-wide finish in NASCAR history. Devin? Oh, what are you pointing at? I don't know what you're pointing at.
I have to pull it down, but actually, let me pull it down.
Yeah, pull it down, Devin. Closest three-wide finish in history. There we go. Truly unbelievable. Devin's got a picture of it here if you're watching on YouTube. It was, is that the mailer you got to remind you to get tickets? I like it. Suarez beat Ryan Blaney and Kyle Busch in that order, and Austin Cindric and Bubba Wallace rounded out the top 5. That was a year ago. My takeaway as far as fast cars at Daytona was, and I said this on social media, people that asked me, even going into the race, but certainly during and after it, Penske Fords and the Toyotas were hooked up too, more so than we've seen in the past, and particularly Bubba Wallace. But Wallace has finished runner-up at Daytona and Atlanta before. And I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Suarez do well there again. So Suarez won this race a year ago. He's finished runner-up at Atlanta before as well. I need to point out, Atlanta, since the repave or since the reprofiling in 2022, has had two-time winners. Who are the two-time winners, boys?
Joey Logano and William Byron.
Bingo. All right, so that's 4 of the 6 races. Then we have who are the one-offers? There's only 2 more.
Daniel Suarez.
And summer 2022.
Chase
Elliott. So think about now, Suarez is a bit of a wild card winner. It's just that was his only win of the year. That's how he got in the playoffs. But Trackhouse is not a slouch team, right? I mean, they run mid to front pack. Atlanta has not crowned wild card winners. They've had wild card drivers run up front, but they do not crown wild card winners there because I think of the factors we mentioned a moment ago, the close quarters. Did I talk over you, Dan? I'm sorry.
No. I was just thinking about Doug, Devin, do you see Atlanta? Do you see any of the drivers coming from Daytona expecting a little bit of payback for some of the things that happened to Daytona? Do you think you'll see anything in Atlanta?
Maybe not cutting a break, maybe not letting someone in line, but I don't think you can retaliate the way some people think of retaliation.
It's not that. It's just it's a way down there. You run so close again in the pack that subtly you can make a statement without making a statement.
I mean, you could definitely not cut someone a break for sure.
Yep.
I think definitely.
Do you expect to see any of that?
I will say this: what better track to exact payback than the track that comes after Atlanta? Circuit of the Americas, you got all those slow corners. Turn 1, you could just someone out of the way. They are running the shorter course there, which I think is going to make the racing tighter, more exciting, which even when you get down to those stadium turns, right? It turns like 11, 12-ish around there. That to me, carry your grudges to Texas.
What about vindication? Do you think there'll be drivers that'll come to Atlanta to show what they weren't able to show at Daytona? Do you think some of them will come back for vindication?
Look who led laps at Daytona. Austin Cindric led the most laps at Daytona. He led 32 laps last spring. All right.
Logano has history in Atlanta, so I look for him to come back and vindicate himself over what he was capable of as well.
And he finished 28th last spring and led 27 laps, then won the summer race. The Penske cars, Ryan Blaney almost won. He led 31 laps last spring. I'm pointing to last spring because it's similar conditions. I know that the summer races happened in between. And anything could happen. You could have, Cody Ware come up there and win or something, technically, right? But I'm saying that the Penske cars are hooked. Their cup of tea seems to be Phoenix and super speedways, right? I mean, there's other stuff they went at, but Phoenix and super speedways, you could almost count on them to be making hay out there at Atlanta Motor Speedway. So, yeah.
But the Toyotas ran so good at Daytona. I'm looking for the Toyotas to run good at Atlanta as well.
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to go look real quick before we get going. I know we've gone long today, y'all. I hope you all can forgive us for that. The Amberry, that's twice now. Whose name did I say wrong earlier? Dustin Bixby. So let me just get all the Atlanta stuff wrong. That's great. In Atlanta, the entry list, Corey LaJoie is entered again, by the way. He almost won that 2022 summer race at Atlanta. He had that Chase Elliott block, got him in the wall there, and he was trying to race his way into the playoffs. So Corey LaJoie's entered. J.J. Yaley for New York Racing is entered in the 44 machine, and B.J. McLeod in the 78. Let me just quickly scroll over to Xfinity. I already told you that Eric Almirola was going to be at that one. Sorry, my page is not loading. Come on. But this will attract a few more cars. By the way, that means only 39 cars entered this weekend, so everybody should race unless you have some late entries. there are all sorts of changes on the Xfinity side because Daytona always draws different people with the one-off stuff. So Nick Lights is replacing Patrick Emmerling, a car that finished 10th a week ago in the 07. Eric Almirola is going to be in the 19 car this time around. Who ran the 19 Xfinity this past week? I don't even remember. Okay, sorry. 35 will be Joey Gase. 45, Mason Massey. So first race of the year for Douglasville's Mason Massey there is running a part-time schedule with Alpha Prime. Another Mason in the form of Maggio will be in the 53 ride for Joey Gase Motorsports. Leland Honeyman returns to the 70 car. Carson Ware returns to the 74. CJ McLaughlin returns to the 92 machine. And then in the truck series, we mentioned that Luke Fenhouse is going to be in that race along with Kyle Busch. Any other ones to mention? Michael McDowell is going to try again in the 07. Akinori Ogata will be in his own number 63 truck. All right, so there's another couple of names. Now, that one has 33 teams going for 36 spots. At Daytona, you had trucks and Xfinity cars go home, not to mention Cup cars. This one, I don't think we'll have anybody fail to qualify unless something strange happens. So there you go. Layout for the weekend. Any other headlines or things you saw come across your desk that we need to discuss?
I think we all got it covered on this monster episode.
It is a monster episode there. No driver interviews. Is still $120 in the bucket there. We'll have this up. You're watching it on YouTube, listening on Apple and Spotify. Dan's got his 5 to go hard hat. This is the only 5 to go merch that we have, ladies and gentlemen. So we're working on it. We're working on it. We got a sponsor.
I've got my 5 to go hard hat ready to go because I think Atlanta's going to be a great weekend. And I'm still waiting for Atlanta to be the deciding championship race at the end of the year.
And there was and Steve O'Donnell said on NASCAR's new podcast, Hauler Talk, where Steve O'Donnell, Mike Ford, and Amanda Ellis all are going to talk about, how they officiated the races, basically. Steve O'Donnell in an interview last week did say championship race. They are open to it rotating and definitely are looking hard at playoff changes, which we already knew. I don't know that Atlanta will be in that rotation, but Dan will campaign for it every episode.
If they switch to a 3-round final round, you got to put Atlanta in there.
Now, that what I would say. If you have a 3-race final, sure, put in Atlanta or, yes, put it in Atlanta. I'm all for it.
Atlanta's got to be the deciding championship race.
There you go. And make it last, too. Why not?
Nice.
So, yeah, make it last.
Nice.
Okay.
You can. You know what? At three-round championship 4, I think you could do Atlanta as the final race because you've had other 2 races to set everything up.
That's true. There you go. You respond right here. Got to say it once, just like Kenny Wallace. Respond right here. Atlanta should be the final race of the year. Okay, there you go. That's from Dan. Devin, last thoughts from you, sir.
Just looking forward to Atlanta Motor Speedway weekend and Better Health 400. Hey, shout out to my friend and my coworker at North Georgia, Ryan Hutchinson. He's going to be doing PA at Atlanta Motor Speedway this weekend for NASCAR weekend. So
something he and I got in common
throughout the weekend.
Hey, have Ryan call me if he needs any tips, okay?
Okay.
That's great. What a great breakthrough and what a great opportunity. And I know Brian is the track vice president and GM, Brandon Hutchison's son, okay? So you're like, oh, okay. But really, what a breakthrough to let a college student do PA. Doing PA at a racetrack, no matter the size, that was Dan Elliott gave me that opportunity at Gresham back in 2010 and 2010 through 14. That is a great way to work your chops. And even though you're doing something in front of a lot of people, but you have more runway to screw up than you do in a broadcast. Well, and I mean that right. It's like you're not going to be as scrutinized doing that because there's all this other stuff going on. And sometimes they might not even hear you, right? It's like you have a little, it's where you can really work your chops, but it's such a vitally important job there. So big shout out. I'm glad you said that, Devin, to Ryan Hutchison there, who'll be on PA. I imagine he'll be up there with Lenny Baticki, right? Lenny Baticki's usually there for PRNs at the track. So I'm sure they'll be sharing the mic a little bit. Hey, my final thought is this. We didn't mention it all during the show. We could do a deeper dive of some later races, but Fox decided to do, I think the number is only 18 minutes of full screen commercials during the race. Now, you have to do some full screens just because you sell local breaks to the local affiliates and to the TV provider. All right. But only 18 minutes, and I'm not counting the rain delay, only 18 minutes of full screen commercials. They had a lot of side-by-sides, but they meant a lot more commercials because they have to sell those for less. I'm a fan. I like, even if it's the commercial and you don't have the commentators talking over it, I am a fan of that. We need to have the full race. We need to have it on screen as much as possible. Formula One runs 2 hours on screen. Soccer matches run their full. You don't miss one kick in a soccer match on screen. You don't miss one down of an NFL game, one baseball pitch, one basketball shot. So I'm all for it. I'm glad Fox. For years, I've been saying we should do that, and I'm glad that Fox is thinking outside the box. Okay, so there you go. And we will see you in Atlanta. Raceway Ministries tent. Check us out. I think it's 9 a.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. Sunday. Saturday is Carson Hocevar. Sunday, we got Denny Hamlin. How about that? DH will be in the Raceway Ministries tent there. We'll be chopping it up, a little 10-minute Q&A there with some fans, and usually the drivers find a way to sign an autograph or 3-2. Denny will be on a tight schedule Sunday morning, so we'll see how that goes. So check us out over there. All the action this weekend, goprn.com. You can listen to the races if you listen via the NASCAR app. I don't even think you have to subscribe for the scanners to get the free radio feed on there. So do that, or goprn.com. Local affiliates, I think it's Extra 106.3 or 680 The Fan, whichever they decide to put it on that stick here in Atlanta, Georgia.
WDUN as well.
WDUN, thank you for saying that. WDUN in North Georgia, and I believe 92.5 The Bear in South Metro Atlanta, if I'm not mistaken, are the affiliates. I should know that offhand, but it changes a little bit. And I was working at a different station for a long time, so I didn't pay attention to the affiliates too much. Yeah, so, but we're thankful for local and national affiliates there. Dan, Devin, I love doing this with you, and we've got another one up on YouTube, episode 301. Be sure to like our Facebook page as well. Interact with us. Devin.Kupka Instagram, Devin_Kupka on X, and then you can find both me, Doug Turnbull, and Devin on the major social medias on Facebook and all that too. So thank you all for joining us today. Be sure to share this around, subscribe, like, comment, all that stuff that we're supposed to say because we're on YouTube now. And we'll catch you next week after Atlanta and heading Dakota here on the 5 to Go podcast.